Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero. From time to time, fascination, creativity, and ingenuity results in an invention that changes the landscape, enables innovation, and alters the human experience. Bronze, cement, agriculture, the photograph, the phonograph, indoor plumbing, the airplane, wireless radio, the personal computer. These are some of the innovations that accelerated the way we do things, changed our productivity, and enhanced the way that we are able to create, communicate, and foster interaction and understanding between our human tribes. Heady stuff, one might argue, compared to the topic of this show, which is known formally as the Roland TR-808 Rhythm Composer, or more casually, the 808. While just last month it was inducted into the NAMM Technology Hall of Fame, you might say, come on, man, you're comparing the impact of a box that makes a dozen sounds to controlled human flight. Well, stay with me for a minute, and we'll tell you just what that box really did. See, back in 1963, an engineer and inventor named Taro Kakahashi founded a company called Ace Tone. They made amplifiers, organs, and other electronics for musicians. One of their product lines was called Rhythm Ace. It was a box that produced preset rhythms to accompany organists. Simple beats that emulated the bossa nova, the foxtrot, the cha-cha, and a few other staples that evolved with each update. One of these machines ended up in the hands of Don Lewis, who was a keyboard artist with an electronic engineering background and an uncontainable imagination. He hacked the Rhythm Ace to create accents, customize the beat sequences, and respond to commands he could deliver from other devices. And at the Summer NAMM show in Chicago in 1969, Taro Kakahashi, or Mr. K as he was affectionately known, saw a Don Lewis demonstration for Hammond organs and realized that his machine was doing things that he never designed it to do. And he started a conversation that hatched a friendship that spawned a new company, Roland, with a fresh outlook on how to serve creators of music. Mr. K, with the help, or at the insistence, of Don Lewis and others in his team of engineers, set out to create a machine that would not only accompany artists, but allow them a creative voice in rhythm by giving them the tools to write and sequence their own patterns and save them, control the dynamics, the tuning, the attack, and the decay of each instrument. Separate the sounds to their own outputs, save sequences of grooves with breaks and rolls up to 768 measures long, and trigger them from other electronic instruments. That latter concept was at first resisted by practically all of the other synthesizer manufacturers, but eventually became standardized in the protocol known as MIDI, short for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, which is the language by which all modern electronic instruments synchronize and communicate with each other. That's what the 808 gave us, rhythmic freedom, and the ability to communicate ideas with unprecedented liberty. But it was a commercial failure at first. Roland produced about 12,000 of them, which is a coincidence because it offered 12-voice polyphony and retailed for $1,200. And that was just a little too expensive for a machine that, for all its capabilities, had to synthesize its sounds, so that it just didn't sound like traditional drums. The world wasn't quite ready for that. At least not until hip-hop came along and made those synthesized drum sounds with their relentless drive and exaggerated fidelity, the razor-sharp hats, the robot cowbell, the unmistakable clave, and most of all, that bass drum. It's tunable thunder from the far reaches of space, grounded right to the center of the earth. It's no coincidence that we started installing subwoofers in cars when the 808 bass drum became ubiquitous. So those are the two things that are most important about this machine. One, that it forever altered the sonic landscape in popular music and the fidelity requirements of its consumers. and 2, that it forced a unity in the industry that led to the very democratization of music creation by enabling the creative voice of a revolutionary generation. It is the electronic music equivalent to gunpowder. So in this episode, we will hear from music producers and innovators who have wielded the 808 to tremendous success, and we'll get their thoughts on the impact of and their affection for this simple but sophisticated machine that changed the world.
Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay
This
Moore.
is Greg Proops.
This is Jordan Harbinger.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is
East.
Sebastian Younger.
This is Rick Marotta.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summers.
Hey, this is Skunk Baxter.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Oh, yeah. This is the one.
Don Lewis was arguably the catalyst for the creation of the TR-808, and certainly the agent of the features that made it crucial. For that, and for his application of the concept of frequency modulation in synthesizers, he is the Les Paul of electronic music. Here's our friend Don Lewis.
This is Don Lewis, and you're listening to the Break It Down Show.
For our 808 segment, I am with Don Lewis, who surprised me because prior to doing a little more research, I had heard that Don Lewis had something to do with the influence of the TR-808. And I called you and I said, Don, let's talk. I want to talk about your influence on the 808. How far back does that go? And now the TR-808 is a machine that came out. When did it come out?
I think it was around 81, 82.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even if we conservatively say 81, when I said, Don, I want to track your influence on this machine, when did it begin? You said something that blew my mind. You said June of 1969.
Yes.
So let's rewind to that point. And then I want you to know that we are certainly going to point our listeners to your blog about the history of the TR-808 because it's fascinating and important. But just to give a little recap, talk about June of 1969 and how that led eventually to the TR-808.
Okay, so June 1969 marks the my first NAMM show, and I was invited to come to be an artist for the Hammond Organ Company. Hammond had just come out with an instrument called the X77, which is right behind you there. And
along with about 85 other instruments.
and I had been playing the X77 with a rhythm unit called the FR2L Ace Tone, Rhythm Ace.
The Rhythm Ace.
The Rhythm Ace. And Mr. Kakahashi was the president of that company, who later on becomes the founder of Roland.
Uh-huh.
So I had modified that FR2L because none of the rhythms made any musical sense to me for what I was doing. So with my engineering background, I went inside. I had schematics and a whole bit. So I went inside and changed a whole lot of the rhythm patterns and some of the sounds. I did a little tweaking on some of the sounds because they had variable resistors and things like that in there where you could change the tank circuits and get a different sound out of it. Anyway, so I bring this rhythm unit with me to perform. And I wired it through the Hammond organ so that the expression pedal on the Hammond would actually give me accents. So the volume was controlled by the expression pedal on the Hammond.
Okay.
I had wired it through the Hammond.
Mm-hmm.
And so Kakahashi was sitting in the audience when I did my presentation, and he came up afterwards. He had a big grin on his face, and he says, he introduced himself. He says, that looks like my rhythm unit, but it doesn't sound like it. What did you do to it?
You hacked my rhythm ace.
Yes. So anyway, I opened it up and I showed him all the modifications at it. From then on, It was my mantra every time I saw him. I says, I have to have programmable rhythm because every time I get a new song or a new arrangement or something, I have to go in and change all these wires.
Yeah.
And so that started in '69. And he says, it's going to take, that's very expensive right now. It's too expensive because even my, what we call mini computers then were selling for like $25,000.
Yeah, $25,000, and they were the size of a large suitcase.
Yes, yes.
And they had the computing power of really like a calculator that we have nowadays.
Right. So I waited it.
Yeah, you waited them out.
Yeah, I waited them out. Anyway, so when they decided the first innovation going into that was probably the CR68, which came out in the 80s.
Yeah. And you still have a CR78 in your lab now.
CR78, yeah. I have that one. And the 68 came out first, and then the 78 came out months later.
It's funny because now what we have at our disposal, it's almost like looking in someone's garage and seeing one of those old-timey bikes with the great big front wheel.
Yes.
And when you look at old gear like that, it's funny.
Yeah. And but that was the genesis of it, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
The guys who made the that dream of mine come to fruition. It was a team of engineers at Roland, and Kikomoto-san was the chief engineer, and he's a dear friend right now.
Still,
yeah. And we have two ties. The TR-808, and both of us were born in '41.
Okay.
So that's a great story too. When we had our 70th birthday, I went over to Japan and we all celebrated together. One of the presidents of Roland, Mr. Dan, he was also a 41. So we did our 41. We did our 70th.
I shudder to think what you guys did to celebrate you guys probably went out and ate blowfish or something.
Oh no, not quite that bad. It was live lobster though.
That's close. So here's what I really wanted to capture was the fact that your influence on the 808, it's easy to ask that question and then not realize the depth of the answer that you're going to get. And the depth of the answer that I got was what I expected was something to do with the sound, something to do with the circuitry, something to do with the actual machine as it is now. Mm-hmm. But you were responsible for conceptually making it so that that machine was programmable.
Yes.
So what you're doing now, though, is you're telling the difference between the Rhythm Ace, which provided preset rhythms,
right,
and now the ability to create.
Yes.
And so that leads me to my next question, which is, in the legacy of the TR-808, what do you think is the most important factor that makes that machine crucial to the soundscape that it's so ubiquitous in now?
I think it was the fact that it was available to a new creative process of people who didn't have all the other things that the big studios had.
Yeah.
They were creating music, and the guys back in New York, I guess there was a New York connection, and also I guess out here in the West, but they saw that this was a tool and they could create with it their own sound. They didn't want the sound of the tradition. And that's what knocked the TR-808 out of the mainstream when it first came out. Is that
it did not have traditional drum sound.
Yes, you're right.
And then later, that became its commodity.
Yes. And so you start to see a cultural change. Mm-hmm. The things, and you think about all the things that happened between that time. You're talking about the Vietnam War, the whole cultural shift, the beatniks, and
culture was ready to change.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this
musical culture being no different.
Yeah. So this happens at this crucial time. I mean, it took like 20 years. It took a score to make that change, but they happened to be on that edge. And when they heard that sound, it was a sound that complemented what it was, a rebel sound. That bass drum.
The bass drum.
The bass drum was the biggest bass drum you ever heard.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah. And that's because I wanted them to not only to make it so we could design the rhythm patterns, but also to make it so that you could tweak the drum sound. So if you wanted a longer decay, you could have it, and that's what you got in that bass drum.
Right.
You could change all of those things, and
if you can point to one factor that's probably the most obviously crucial in why that machine is so important in hip hop, it's that. It's the long decay of the bass drum. Because later it became crucial that you tune it.
Yes.
And then it became a part of the melodic landscape as well.
Yeah.
And we have you to thank for that. Don, this has been amazing, and I'm going to cut you off because we can go forever, and we will. But for this segment, that's plenty. Producer Mike C has used the 808 since the beginning. Whether it's a hip-hop, funk, or R&B tune, or a film or TV score, its sonic colors and textures are a constant on his palette. Here's Mike C.
Hey, this is Mike C, and you're listening to the Break It Down Show.
Mike, you're a producer. You make music for all kinds of people. And obviously, you know what a Roland 808 is. I'm wondering, it was inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on it being a Hall of Fame worthy piece of equipment?
Oh, my goodness. The 808, that, like, just goes back for years and years. Man, it's like, it's such a significant piece of equipment. It's just like the 808 is just like, it's a staple in, like, you know, all types of music. You gotta have that. You gotta have that bottom, the bottom end. It's really great. It's really, really great to have in there.
Did anyone say you have to have the bottom before there was a Roland 808, or did that piece of equipment invent that term?
Totally. That the 808 created that whole that whole wave. There was nothing like it. It was that definitely it changed the face of music. How, you know, just rhythmically and, you know, urban wise, you know, club wise, I mean, even, you know, radio wise as well, you know. And then later on, when folks started tuning the 808, you know, to play different notes, that was amazing. You know, that alone was crazy. It definitely changed everything.
When I say the songs that made the 808, like without the 808, they wouldn't be hits. What songs come to mind where, like, just the 808 was it that made that song special?
Oh, man. Ooh, wow. How much time do you have? Oh, man. I don't even know where to begin. For me, wow. Like one of the first ones that I heard that, like, just, I was like, what is that?
Well, like Planet Rock,
man.
That goes way back.
Well, yeah, of course. Planet Rock. What was the Cars That Go Boom?
Yeah.
You know, back in the
Tigra and Bunny.
Who was that JJ? Was that JJ Fat? No, that wasn't JJ Fat.
It was Tigra and Bunny.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, that all the Dre stuff, and you know me, I'm a Jam and Lewis fanatic, so all of, you know, like the SOS band, and you know, even, you know, R. Kelly. Shoot, man, it's just crazy.
When you've used it, is it a choice between another drum machine, or you're like, let's just stick with the 808? We know it booms, we know it brings what we want, or how do you, when you sprinkle in there, do you even use it anymore? Is it passé now?
Oh no, it's never passé. No, I do use it. You know, it's a funny story. I bought an 808 back in the 80s. And I was driving to a gig and I had all of my gear it was crazy, on the back of my truck. And there was an accident on the freeway. And like when I slammed on my brakes, my tailgate came down on my truck and all my gear fell out onto the freeway. And 808 was one of the pieces of gear that just, they didn't survive.
Yeah.
Kind of like bummed me out. So, I had to figure something else out. Going back to the question, yeah, that's my go-to for, bottom end. I use that a lot and I will continue to use that.
Why? 40 years later.
The why, I don't know. I was watching a while back. I was watching a documentary, and they were talking about the whole 808 and how it was put together and the inside workings of the unit, and just the sound that it gets, that low end, man. You can't get it from anything else other than an 808, and it's just, I don't know. It's just that sound. I've heard other companies try to, or other samples that try to get that sound from something else other than the 808, and it just doesn't have that feel, that low end, that punch, that
Mm-hmm.
it's just got something that is very unique, and that's why I definitely think it needs to be in the Hall of Fame. That sound is just it's a staple. It's like peanut butter and jelly.
The 808 is like peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, it's going to be around for a long time.
Any funny stories? Anything else you want to add?
No, the only thing about the 808, I would love to get another 808 machine. That's what I would like. I'm on the prowl for one. So Roland, if you're listening,
send one on over.
Send one on over.
The Hall of Famer, the bottom king, the 808 from Roland. I love it, man. Hey, thank you so much for checking in.
Thank you for having me, and thank you, Roland, for giving us the 808. We appreciate you.
Gavin Brown has written and produced for a wide variety of artists, including Lady Gaga, The Tragically Hip, Billy Talent, and the Bare Naked Ladies. While you might not associate those acts with the sounds from the 808, it still has a special place for him. Here's why.
Hi, this is Gavin Brown, and you're listening to The Break It Down Show.
Yeah, as part of our 808 series, I'm bringing in some producers. Dave Aude connected me to Gavin. And so I wanted to check in with you, Gavin, and get your thoughts on the 808 was inducted into the TEC Hall of Fame. NAMM has the TEC Awards, and, they recognize people and products every year. So when I say to you, hey, the 808 is in the Hall of Fame, first off, did you know that there was a TEC Hall of Fame for products and everything?
I didn't, but I would assume that makes sense. There are so many devices that have shaped the way technology, like music, is made. It's without certain technology, certain entire genres of music don't exist. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, it does. And it's really neat to be able to celebrate this product. When you think about your products like the 808 that's been around for decades, how many of the things as a producer do you have that you might, and obviously you're a rock guy, so you may not use the 808 every day, but how many things in your stable of tools that you use are that old but still that pervasive in the marketplace?
Well, that's nothing. There's there's some guys who show up with a Linn drum. It's a band I work with who guys got a couple Linn drums, and that's not as the same kind of diversity and depth. I started with the Boss Dr. Rhythm. I guess I got one in 1980, which is around the same time 808 came out. And it was just mind-bogglingly awesome. I started out as a drummer, so then having something to play along to was huge. When all these drum machines came out, it just basically changed how people listen to music. One of the main things I think about when making records isn't necessarily the musician's relationship to it, but more the audience relationship to it. So, since MIDI and since drum machines, everything's in time.
Yeah.
You know,
is that a good thing though?
You know, I think so. Or maybe it's not for me to make an opinion of that. It's more that's how people listen to music. You know, I make a joke that if there's a guitar in the song, it's old people's music. You know, and if it's out of time, it's old people's music. And if it's out of tune, it's old people's music.
That's funny.
So if you want to do those things, you know, you're not going to sound contemporary. If you want to be slightly out of tune, you know, if you want to be out of time, which might also mean in human time. So I guess for me, it's not really my opinion. It's just more what's the desired effect on the other end.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, how often do you use an 808? Is that cross-genre translate for you at all, or are you going?
Well, yeah. So what happens now is, you know, my job in pop music, I have a bunch of pop music that I make, but usually there comes a beat maker with it. My son being the main guy I use, and his knowledge of 808 far exceeds mine, and maybe you should be talking to him. But my ability is to help create the song and you know, help make sure the communication's clear. And his job is to know what version of the 808 is the latest cool cat version happening. You know, someone like Dave Aude would know the history of each of the kick drums in dance music.
Right.
And, you know, so I rely on people who are specialists. You know, I go, you know, when you go to the doctor, you go talk to your GP, and then they say, well, you have a heart problem, so you go to the heart doctor. So for me, you know, I have a generalist knowledge of these kinds of things, and I have a historic knowledge in some senses, but I don't necessarily know what is the most contemporary sound right now. And the funny thing is, it's probably an 808.
That's great.
You know,
why is
the
that?
Thing that's
do you think?
Yeah, that is a very good question. Why is the 808 the thing? Well, it's, you know, one of the things that I find interesting is you can do stuff with the 808. You know, like when I make pop music or slightly industrial music, it's, you know, everything has to be a little bit distorted and a little bit different, a little bit alternative, let's just say. And so when you start to compress or distort an 808, it doesn't lose its integrity. In fact, it becomes a new thing. But it still has the beef and the impact. You know, there are other sounds that you start to mess with them maybe in the analog world, and they just go away. You know, they're just the essence of it just disappears. But the 808, you can smush it, you can crunch it, you can, you know, put tons of, you know, there's tone to it, there's impact, there's character, and that's, I guess, why it's stood the test of time. You know, more than anything else. Like, I have a bunch of other little drum machines and old gadgets that they just lose their impact and don't grow into something new. Just stay a lesser version of themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does make sense, and it follows basically what we've been talking about with the other producers we've had on the show.
Okay.
The ability
Great.
to do that. And like when someone comes to you as a producer and says, "Hey, we want really good bottom end," aren't they really just saying, "We want you to grab an 808 and make a beat for us"? I mean, that's like it.
Oh my god! Like, oh my god! Yeah.
Like that's just
you know, it's you know, it's a funny thing how people are listening to music and the beats that are being made now. You know, it's almost just a slight variation on the 808. Like which kind of 808 do you want? There's no other like thing in conversation even.
What?
There's, you know, it's like, do you want the 808 this way or do you want the 808 that way? It's like we used to have a kick drum and now we have the 808.
Right.
So.
When we scope back and we look at products in general as a producer, what is on par with something that's, so if the 808 is in the Hall of Fame, what's another product that's out there like this is a Hall of Fame grade product? So maybe we can get so we can get kind of a sense for what is and what isn't a Hall of Fame grade thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the same area, you know, we're looking at the Lindrum. For me, I like great stuff that Mike Campbell and Don Henley did with, you know, in that era. But I also find, you know, like the Space Echo should be in the Hall of Fame. You know, the Echoplex. You know, those kinds of things should be in the Hall of Fame. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. You know, I guess there's trying to think, you know, the fuzz pedal, regardless of the kind, should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
You know,
right about that.
It's like a whole genre in and of itself,
Right.
where, you know, you go to the store, you go to your cool guitar store down the street, or even your like local, you know, synth store. We have these Moog stores in Canada where, you know, they sell keyboards, but they also sell a ton of pedals.
Mm.
And, you know, you take a digital sound and you put it through a fuzz pedal, and you have a whole new, you know, set of paints to work with. You know, and there's all the different kinds of fuzz pedals and distortion pedals. The other one that I use the most is the Wurlitzer. And it, to me, is like the 808 version of a keyboard.
Right.
Where you can distort it and it sounds great. We can put chorus on it, it sounds great. It's soulful, it's aggressive, it's sad, it's beautiful, it's haunting, you know. It's in soul music, it's in rock music, it's in pop music, you know.
Yeah.
The Wurlitzer, to me, I got one when I was 10, and my dad was a music teacher. So it's funny. In the early 80s, when I was 10, the high school that he taught at was getting rid of all of their instruments in order to get these newfangled DX7s into, you know, they had a whole computer music section, which was, you know, the advent of MIDI. And so that's, I think, where my Dr. Rhythm showed up, was through that high school. But home came the nice Ludwig drums that they'd had in the 70s, and the Wurlitzer electric piano that they had in the music room at this high school, because they got replaced.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I've had a couple of these instruments my whole life, basically. You know, there's a record doesn't go by without Wurlitzer on it. And there's some hit songs that I've made that have Wurlitzer distorted in with the guitars, where it's, you know, it's hard to, it just fills it out, and people are like, how do you get that guitar sound? I'm like, well, it's a Wurlitzer. And, you know, so the 808 has the same kind of thing. It's like, how did you get that wicked feeling? Well, there's an 808 in there with the drum.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So.
No, that's cool. Well, and when a band shows up, I'll just say, like, you're Canadian, so the Tragically Hip show up and they want to do something neat.
Yeah.
What's their appetite for, you know, something like an 808? I mean, maybe they've used 808s and I just have missed it, but, you know, are they open?
Yeah, well, this is actually the guy who was using the Lynn drums, Johnny Fay, the drummer from the Tragically Hip, has a whole pile of crazy, like, you know, he has this Russian clapper machine that you hear from like Rick James records, and he has 2 or 3 Lynn drums, and he has a Studer tape machine that he likes to lug around, and he's got all these little toys, and they have at times used them as kind of artistic jumping off points. We might not use them tracks in the record. You know, there's a couple songs that they have that are really big that have, there's one called I forgot what it's called right now, but it has a Lynn drum, Ahead by a Century. Sorry, it's called Ahead by a Century, and there's like a little drum machine loop that he has, and writing with them, we would start with these kinds of loops, and that would stimulate the rhythm. You know, whether they wound up in it or not was usually not, but just the nature of their music. So, but you know, it's funny to start with technology to work back towards organic.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess somehow the mind makes a contemporary version. If you have the latest technology, you know, it's like songwriting. A lot of times you wind up writing a song on an acoustic guitar, but there's no acoustic guitar in the final version. It's, you know, all synths, you know, but whatever it is that stimulated the creativity, whether it's, you know, a device of modernity or a device of historic significance.
I love it. Hey, well, listen, I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us and giving us your thoughts on the 808. It's cool to be able to celebrate a product, and I really appreciate the heck out of you for doing it.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me, and thanks to Dave Aude for asking me, and everyone enjoy your time with the 808. It's not going away.
Jamie Hartman has written songs for a long list of artists, including Christina Aguilera, Andy Grammer, and the Backstreet Boys. He was the lead singer of the band Ben's Brother, that actually had a live drummer and a great one, Carl Brazil. Still, the 808 was crucial to him. Here's why.
Hey, this is Jamie Hartman, and you're listening to the Break It Down Show.
Let's talk about the Roland 808. That's the main thing I wanted to get into. It was inducted into the TEC Awards Hall of Fame.
So it was.
Yeah. So, and I was talking to some of the other guys. They said, I still use it to this day. It's one of the few pieces of electronic music equipment that has remained relevant for decades.
Yeah, for sure.
Why?
It's just classic sounds. Sonics, I think, like anything, dictate, they create a certain, for me, a mood, but also a memory.
Yeah.
We live with, I was just looking at back then at the little thing you just showed me, and it had Public Enemy on there. You've got all these incredible records, and the sounds of the 808 now and then remain iconic. They're just wonderful sounds that you can use and they're very versatile as far as where they apply. Great sounds can be used in just about anything. But
not so much anymore. But until recently, electronic drums were kind of frowned upon, unless it was an 808.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't. There's just something about certain characters that don't fit the times, unusually.
Hey, this is Pete A. Turner from Lions Rock Productions. We create podcasts around here. And if you, your brand, or your company want to figure out how to do a podcast, just talk to me. I'll give you the advice on the right gear, the best plan, and show you how to take a podcast that makes sense for you, that's sustainable, that's scalable, and fun. Hit me up at pete@breakitdownshow.com. Let me help. I want to hear about it.
I don't. There's just something about certain characters that don't fit the times, unusually. I think also the music business is cyclical, very much so. People we tend to go in cycles. We want grunge, we want punk, we want a reinvention of whatever it is that we loved. I think the 808 is just one of those, as I said, iconic pieces of kit that is going to keep coming back.
Right.
Because these days, particularly, I listen to fantastic producers like Lewis Bell, who I've known for a few years, lucky enough to have worked with a few times in the past, and guys who are using these sounds in such a great way, in such a modern, sparing way. And I think that modern music doesn't have time for too much fluff or too much peripheral stuff going on. It's very well put together. It's quite, I wouldn't say simple, but it's very specific. So, if you've got a generation of kids and music listeners who don't have that much time, they just know what they want to hear, then a song and a record becomes a brilliant idea, whatever the idea of the song is, plus a very simple execution of that idea and well delivered. So it gives you it without, too much fluff going on. And I think a great drum machine allows that to happen easily because it doesn't get in the way of the melody. It just supports what's going on.
One of the things I've learned from doing these interviews is that when someone comes to you and says, I want really strong bottom end, you just know already. They're saying, I need the 808.
Yeah, the 808 has got that thing that just, I work with a guy called, if I'm very lucky, occasionally a guy called Warren Oakfelder, who's a fantastic producer.
Sure.
And I've learned a thing or two from him recently. And, these guys, there are only one or two machines that they ever want to go back to. They always want to find the new thing and a new twist on it. But again, it's about stock sounds and it's about finding and using what's wonderful. And that solid bottom end, also Manny mixes my records, Manny Marroquin, who's a total legend. And I always love the bottom end in his records.
Yeah.
And there's another guy who knows how to harness an 808 and just really make it punch properly.
Yeah.
In any situation. So bottom end is key.
When you look at your palette of sounds and the things that make those sounds and this new sound you might invent, one of the guys that we know, he's an engineer, mixer, fantastic producer. His name's Wes Maybe. He's from, he's Dutch, but he lives in London and he does things. And he's like, I want to take a cymbal, hit it and put it underwater and record that. Like he's always looking for new sounds. But even he's like, but the 808 is like, it's compulsory. You have to have it. How many things are in your palette, if you were to guess and say like, if I need to pull a sound out, I've got these 150 devices or whatever it is. How do you describe that?
For me, I am very much I'm a conventional singer-songwriter. I came from being in a band and working with acoustic organic instruments. And for me, if I'm sitting down, I'm writing a song on a piano or a guitar a lot. But when it comes to putting beats underneath it and using drum sounds, it's actually pretty. I've got, I don't know, there must be 100,000 different drum sounds I have.
Yeah.
But ones I go to on a regular basis, forget it. It's probably 50.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And certainly not in that. And I think that my ear is just drawn to a specific type of bass drum, of kick drum. It's drawn to a specific kind of snare sound. And it's those things that, as I said, allow you to hear a record and just feel the music right. And I think 808 has always done that brilliantly. You know, the TR-808 is just a classic.
When you think about products that are Hall of Fame grade, obviously the 808 had done it just on longevity and ubiquitousness. What would be a peer of that? What can you think of?
Ooh.
I mean, because obviously there's other great things. There's like a mic stand somewhere. That's an important music thing. But
you know, key stuff in any studio for me. I always get excited if I see they've got a Mellotron of any kind in a room, or even the more modern twists on the Mellotron. For me, that's a classic.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm English, so the Beatles relied on that heavily and back in the day. But just the different sounds, it sends me off on a journey as soon as I use any of those sounds. So for me, a Mellotron's pretty fantastic. Yeah, I'm a keys guy as well. So Wurlitz's, you know, some of the Wurlitzer organs I love. I'm trying to think of anything else that's as iconic. I have to say, because I always also concentrate on a voice, it will usually, with the one piece of gear in a studio, I will always center in on first is the microphone.
Sure.
So for me, more recently, I don't want to, you know, I'm not endorsed by anyone, but for me, the Manley, which is the one I record, you know, I've recorded Jennifer Hudson, I've recorded Rag and Bone Man on it, I've recorded Celeste, who's my new breakout artist this year, who's just won the Brit last week. Everything comes through the Manley for me, and but more sort of an iconic mic. All the Neumann range, the original 87s are wonderful. A great 87 is hard to beat because it just gives you what you need.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's not too many pieces.
One of the reasons why I use Shure headsets,
right,
is because of what they've done with all of their microphones. I know that I can put this on someone's head. Even how easy is this?
Yeah,
it's tiny. It does the job. Done.
Oh, you say that? I have to say the SM7.
Of course. Yeah. And that's
SM7 is industry. So anywhere we go, anywhere in the world, that mic gives you what you need every time. So 100%. I should have thought of it. Yeah. Good call.
Well, no, I mean, but there are other mics out there. But yeah, the SM7 is. It's like the Ford F-150. Like, you can put that pickup truck under your kid. You got kids. When you buy, like, I'm going to buy you each a brand new Ford pickup, and it'll drive forever.
Yeah.
And it'll always be useful, and it does the job perfectly.
Dave Aude has produced an absolutely astounding number of chart-topping remixes on the Billboard Dance Club Songs chart. It's a number we can't keep track of anymore, well over 100. And he's produced over a dozen singles for artists the caliber of U2, Madonna, and Beyonce. Here are his thoughts on the importance of the 808.
Hey, this is Dave Aude. You're listening to the Break It Down show.
We are celebrating, Dave, the induction of the 808 into the TEC Awards Hall of Fame. TEC is obviously part of NAMM, and they recognize gear every year, but it's not every year that an 808 goes in, which, by the way, I found out was a failed product at first, and then it became what it is now. You have over 100 number one hits. You obviously know what an 808 is. What does it mean to you in terms of the big picture of like musical sounds created the last 40 plus years? And then also, what about you specifically?
Well, to be honest with you, the 808 really didn't come into my life until much later after it was designed. My first drum machine was it wasn't a 707. It might have been a 626 or a 606. And that was my first drum machine because it was probably a lot cheaper. I think I was 13.
Yeah.
The 808 really hadn't become the huge thing that it is today. Since being a kid and buying, I've owned pretty much every drum machine Roland's ever made. I had to have an 808 because I knew how important it was to have those sounds. Because it's crazy that one machine. I love the 808. I love the 909 too. Right. I'm a house head first and foremost. So I think for house heads, 909s are really like the thing.
Yeah.
But I gotta say the 808 to me is just as special as the 909. The 808 really isn't as much house as it is hip hop, I think, and urban music. But the crazy thing is it's come back around, and now electronic music is really, I would say, more 808 than it is 909 today, anyways.
Right.
So, and listen, just today, this morning, I've used some 808 sounds on a song. So I'm using this thing multiple times every week in the year 2020.
Right.
Still using it, like still turning it on. I now have the Roland Cloud version, and I'm only using that because it's just super quick. That's really the only reason I prefer to use like a cloud version. The cloud version sounds great. I think I told you this earlier. I have an 808 that Studio Electronics modded for me, so I'm able to tune the snare and the kick and a couple other drums. So that's pretty cool. But man, talk about a machine that has been a go-to. There's keyboards I don't use anymore. But this drum machine I've used my entire career. So I don't think I can say that about, I mean, I'm still using like a Juno 106 on stuff, but really there's not many instruments, electronic instruments or keyboards, I should say, or drum, I put drum machines in the keyboard sort of group that everybody is still using sounds on. I mean, because most people use Junos or Jupiters or old 80s synths when they want to do 80s music, which is like, there's a lot of 80s, obviously, stuff going on in today's music, but really the drum machine is become timeless now.
How does the 808 manage to do that? Because you don't see many people, like you said, with those 80s keyboards that were like a guitar and everything. You don't see a lot of that stuff anymore. It's sort of just, it's fallen out of favor. Technology's gotten better. How come the 808 continues to hang on, it's so strong?
Because it has very distinct sounds. I mean, the kick and the snare, for instance, and the hi-hat, those three things on the 808 don't sound like a drum kit, right? Uh-huh. It doesn't sound like a drummer. It didn't pretend to. When they designed this thing, they designed something that was very specifically different and electronic sounding, right? It wasn't supposed to sound like a real snare or a real kick. By the way, and maybe they were, and this is what they came up with. But I mean, it doesn't sound anything like a snare or anything like a kick drum or a hi-hat. It has its own thing. And I don't know if it was the way they designed it or they specifically wanted to make something like futuristic, spacey, crazy, different. But that's why it's just very, very specific. When you hear an 808 kick or a snare or a hi-hat or even the percussion on it doesn't sound like anything else. That's the magic.
That is the magic. How many other things? I mean, you have a lot of toys, like you said, keyboards, that kind of thing. How many other products have the magic in your collection? And I'm not trying to ask you to
No. I mean, there's a couple things that can't be reproduced like that. So, like, I still have an Akai S3000.
Okay, right.
Because that time stretch sound, the intelligent mode time stretch on the Akai S3000 cannot be, that I found, duplicated anywhere else. Crazy as it sounds, the Roland vocoder hasn't been duplicated in my opinion. I mean, you can there's software vocoders, but they just don't sound the same. I don't know if it's just the circuitry, the analog circuitry, plugging a microphone into it. I don't know what it is. It's crazy. We have such crazy technology. I'll tell you what, the Rolling Cloud's doing really made some really, really good stuff. So it's the closest it's ever been, thank God, because for a guy like me, I'm working on 10 songs in one day.
Right.
I just don't want to turn stuff on and patch stuff and deal with that. I want to go really quick and then hit bounce.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like the more things you have to mess with that aren't putting sound through your computer, it just slows you down.
But I'm going to say that's the only thing. Like I have 15 drum machines. I have every drum machine that people would not even want.
Right.
But I don't think that I have anything that's really that I've had from the beginning of my career that I'm still using on a daily basis other than the 808.
That's great.
The 909 is because of close second, but the 909 is really just snares and hats. maybe sometimes some toms, and
Yeah.
the crash, the 909 crash is very, distinctive. But the 808 is getting used just as much, if not probably more than the 909.
And then what did you do? The current 808 that you have, not the cloud, but the hardware one, what did you have to do? Because I hear a lot of people go to quite great lengths to get them because, for whatever happens to their first one, or this is their first one, and they're not super easy to get a hold of.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what they're going for right now. I've had mine for about 20 years. And I think I paid $1,800 20 years ago. And I found a guy with I can't remember if it was an online store. It might've been an eBay store. I'm not sure. I don't remember, in Japan.
Huh.
So I found one in Japan because obviously Roland's from Japan. So it seemed like that was a good place to buy something like this from. And I wasn't going to there was less of a chance I was going to get ripped off or I was going to get a nice machine, something good quality, good condition. And I sent somebody some money, and I got very lucky. The thing showed up. It was packed great, and it was in great condition. And like I said, the first thing I did was send it to my studio electronics guys, and they modded it for me, and it's still in great condition. And I'll probably have this the rest of my life.
Give those guys a shout out one more time so people can find them if they want to do something.
Studio
similar.
Electronics, and Studio Electronics is, they're famous for the SE1, but they're now actually working with Roland, crazy enough, how everything kind of connects in our world sometimes. But they now have the SE1 made with all the Roland, all the mini Roland, they have all the miniature versions of all the keyboards and drum machines now. They have the SE1. Those guys are in Encino, out in by my house in LA. They've been doing it for a long time, and they're great guys. So I want to shout out Studio Electronics.
When I say what song that uses the 808 stands out in your memory, like what's the first thing that comes to mind?
I mean, for me, 808 really goes with anything electro, and electro means a lot of different things to different people. I'm a West Coast guy, so for me, it was like Egyptian Lover. It was the first thing that comes to mind when I think of 808. Anything 80s electro, Lisa and the Cold Jam, or just all that stuff that was getting played when I started going out dancing in high school to clubs.
Right, had
808 stuff.
Well, I think I love you from head to toe to bring in my Lisa and the Cold Jam.
anything. Herbie Hancock used it a lot. I mean, I think he made it big. I don't even think Run DMC used it, but I think they were actually using samples. They were probably very MPC based. Maybe not. No, I'm trying to think. 80, 83. But for me, it was just anything 80s electro, all that 80s electro stuff.
I love it. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate you hanging out and talking about the 808 with me.
Man, I'm happy to talk about stuff like this anytime.
There were a few songs crucial to the emergence of the 808. Sexual Healing by Marvin Gaye, Planet Rock by Africa Bambaataa and the Soul Sonic Force, Electric Kingdom by Twilight 22, and a song that is embedded in my musical and cultural psyche. Egypt by the Egyptian Lover. He's considered by many an instrumentalist, and his instrument is the TR-808. Here is Gregory Broussard, the Egyptian Lover.
Hello, baby. This is the Egyptian Lover, and you're listening to the Break It Down show.
Hey, man, thanks for coming on. The Tech Awards inducted the Roland 808 in the Hall of Fame, and I was talking with Dave Aude, and I was like, who's used the 808 at like the peak level? Like, who do you think of? And he said, I'm a California guy, and I'll take Egyptian Lover. And it opened up right in my head, because I'm a California guy too. We're about the same age, he and I. And I'm like, oh my God, that's right. Like, I can picture you in my head, like in videos, like with your 808 in your arms, and you just, you know what I'm saying? You personify this thing, man. And you found unique ability to create a lifelong living by using that. Talk a little bit about what the 808 means to you and your craft.
Man, when I first heard it, I didn't know what it was. And I just heard the song Planet Rock, and I knew they had took Numbers beat, but they made it more funky. I'm like, wow, whatever drum set they used for that, I love that drum set. I got to get one of those drum sets. So I asked my friend who was a drummer, and he had no idea what kind of drum set they used for that. So one day, a friend of mine hit me up and said, hey, man, there's this new DJ from New York called Africa Islam, and he's doing a set at the radio club radio. And he didn't copy your style, and like all the other DJs in LA, he's different. So you should check him out. I said, oh, cool. I'll come check him out. So when we met, I was like, Africa Islam. Like, that sounds like Africa Bambaataa. Like, where'd you get that name? He said, oh, well, I call Africa Bambaataa my dad. You know, we're friends. I'm like, oh, really? I said, do you know what they used? What kind of drum set they used to make Planet Rock? He said, it wasn't a drum set. It was a drum machine. I'm like, a drum machine? He's like, yeah, it's called the Roland TR-808. So the next day, I went down to the Guitar Center, and the store clerk helped me program the 808 to make Planet Rock beat. And then I started changing the beat up and doing different things, you know, kind of my style, what I wanted to hear it do. And a crowd actually gathered around in the Guitar Center, and I'm like, dang, this sounds like a record already, and people are gathered around already. And I had a show to do with a group called Uncle Jam's Army in 2 weeks at the LA Sports Arena that held 10,000 people. So I knew I had to get this drum machine with beats and bring it to the sports arena to perform with this 808. So bought it, brought it home. For 2 weeks, I just programmed beats into it like crazy, just everything I could think of. And I brought it to the sports arena, and I was playing kind of rocking on the breakdown. I played the real 808, and I was kind of scared, like, because, you know, it's LA, 10,000 people, we got gangsters in the audience, can't bore them with a drum machine. So around the breakdown, I played the drum machine on top of Planet Rock, and then just turned off Planet Rock and had the drum machine going by itself. And then I changed the beat. And when I changed the beat, instead of going boom, 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 it was going boom, 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 boom. And people were just looking at me like, damn, what record are you playing right now? Like, I need to buy that record. And I was kind of smiling like, ha, 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 they don't know it's a drum machine. Then I was adding hi-hats, and I was adding cowbells, and I was adding the toms. And then the owner of Uncle Jim's ran up to the DJ booth and said, man, what record is that? It's loud. It's powerful. Like, I'm like, man, it's all drum machine. I was like, oh, man. I said, we need to make a record. And the whole crowd, all 10,000 people were dancing. And about the first 1,000 close to the stage were like DJs or people who wanted to be a DJ or people who wanted to get in the industry were just staring at me like, what record is that? Then I changed the beat again. Then I changed the beat again. Then I got on the mic and started going, yes, 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 yes. And that was it. The 808 was born in L.A.
I mean, it's incredible, man. And then it was born in L.A. By the way, for those listening, you break something in L.A., it don't get fixed. It stays broke, you know.
That's right.
Wow, man. I didn't realize, you know, because I knew you were a main plank holder with the piece of equipment. We have Don Lewis talking about it, and he's the one, like, before you that's like, these resistors, I can rewire these and change this. And he was the one that really created the guts in this thing. But yeah, you took it and turned it into popular music. Why has the 808 stayed so relevant for so many? I mean, we're talking decades now that it's been out there, and you're not the only guy to figure this thing out. I mean, Andre 3000 name checks the 808 in his music, you know? So how come it stayed relevant for so long?
I think the toyish sound of the snare and the cowbell, I mean, it doesn't sound like a real drum at all. It sounds like a toy. Then you got the kick drum. It's just a different beast altogether. You can decay the kick longer from just a regular pop, boom, boom, or boom, boom, or boom, boom. So the kick drives the whole drum machine, and when all the sounds come out together out the one output, that analog field, all the sounds together is just one incredible sound. I mean, I have not been able to duplicate a live 808 at my shows on any kind of record, CD, it doesn't matter. Pure analog sound coming out the 808 live at the shows sound better than anything you possibly think of.
Why do you think that is? Why does it resonate so well? I mean, who hasn't used an 808, right? I mean, is there another piece of equipment that is as ubiquitous?
No. I mean, the 808 is it. I mean, you don't even need a microphone with an 808. I mean, the 808 plays and people just party. I mean, I was at a party one time and I just had the 808 playing and everybody just was dancing. It was all young kids, had no idea I was playing the drum machine. And they were just dancing. I lifted it up and they started screaming. And like, wow, even the young kids love the sound. It's just the sound of the 808. It reminds you of all these songs that were made in the past. And you it's a familiar sound now. And they all just love it. It's like, wow, that cowbell. Like, give me more cowbell. And then you hear all those hi-hats and the kick drum and the snare. And then the hand clap has this reverb already on it. It's like, it's crazy. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, man, it is unbelievable. Another quick question. One of the things we've learned along the way is that you don't get in the way of the groove, and you seem to abide by that. Like, you let that 808 do most of the work, and when you throw words in, it's like, it's like Egypt, or it's something else. Like you're not writing flowery lyrics and everything else. You really, like, it almost is like that stuff serves the beat. Am I getting that right? Is that by design?
Yeah. Well, I started out as a dancer, not a DJ. I started out as the one who was dancing to the beats. And I always wanted to dance to more beats, and nobody was making more beats. I became a DJ, then I became a performer, and started making my own records. So I started extending the beats in the record and having the whole song just beat-driven. So from 1983 till now, I've just been making records with beats, and the beats are driving the records.
Yeah. Wow, man. I love it. What's one thing we should know about the 808 that we don't know? Is there a funny story in your background somewhere? Give us some insight.
Yeah. Well, one time I was the second time I was in the studio. So it was the second session. I was all by myself. Nobody else was in there but me, the engineer, and the second engineer. And the second engineer plugged all the outputs out the back. I heard the sound. It was like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I'm like, where the hell is that sound coming from? He said, your 808. I said, that sound is not coming from my 808 because I programmed all the sounds in my 808.
Mm-hmm.
So we started pulling the plugs, and the very last plug was the aux out that he wasn't supposed to plug into the mixing board. And we heard this electronic pop sound coming off the AUX output. I was like, man, I could program the AUX on here because it's made to make the beat go higher and lower, so I can actually program the pattern. So I went that, and man, we EQ'd it, took the bass out of it so it can have, more of a good sound with the kick drum and the snare, and put that sound on Egypt, and nobody knew what that sound was. I mean, not even the owner of Roland knew that sound came off the 808. And it was just incredible. And so we EQ'd it and put it in there, and everybody's like, man, what synthesizer you use for that? And I used to just laugh at people. Like, I never told anybody for 30 years how I did it. And then about 5 years ago, I finally told people how to do it. And man, so many people were like, wow. So I did a Roland party. I did a Roland show and used all Roland equipment. And that sound was coming out. And the guy who was running Roland was like, where's that sound coming from? Like the 808. He's like, no way. He actually brought me down to the Roland headquarters and showed all the employees where the sound was coming from. So they was making the new 808s, and they was trying to figure out if they should put that in the new 808s.
And did they include it?
The first one, no. The second one, they did.
Nice. Well, listen, man, as a guy that's enjoyed your music going back when you started, as a California kid, even if I was a crappy breakdancer, I was breakdancing to your stuff. I was roller skating and rexing and trying to figure out
all
girls.
The fun stuff.
Yeah, man. It was cool to be able to do it. And actually, I told a couple of my friends that I was talking to you, and one of them is like, you tell Egyptian Lover that he hung out with my wife-to-be. You went up to Pittsburgh and had a barbecue and watched movies and stuff. Just everybody's got this massive love for you, man. Everybody.
Wow, that's cool.